Hello and welcome back to Funeral DNA, the podcast that analyzes the unique components, trends, and innovations that make up the funeral industry, or as we call it, Funeral DNA. I'm Mike Davis.
And I'm Ashley Solomon.
And today we have Elizabeth Fournier on she's the author of Green Burial Guidebook and the owner of Cornerstone Funeral. So thank you very much for coming on today, Elizabeth.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Love to talk about green burial all day and night long.
Well, that's great, because hopefully we have a good conversation then today. Welcome, Elizabeth, once again. Can you just please give us a little bit of background about yourself and how long have you been in the funeral industry?
Well, I've been in the funeral area arts here now for 31 years. I lived in a cemetery in the hills in Portland, Oregon back in 1990, and scariest job of my life, but glad I did it. And that's when people would actually live in funeral homes and live in cemeteries and do the night keeping gig. So I started there, and I guess it didn't deter me too much. I went on from there, and now I own a parlor out in Boring, Oregon, and I'm on 40 acres. I'm in a repurposed goat barn, and it's very country and very casual, and I'm loving it out here. Cornerstone Funeral, Boring, Oregon.
That sounds beautiful. So the topic today is, as we mentioned, green burial. Would you mind telling us a little bit what that term means?
So the basic concept people need to grab is we are having a loved one who is not full of any embalming chemicals. They're not going to be placed in anything that won't biodegrade, and they're not placed in any sort of container in the ground that won't biodegrade. So we're not looking for a metal casket or a wood casket with lacquer and varnish and metal parts. We're not looking to put somebody into a grave liner or a burial vault or a concrete or something. We just want a natural body in a natural container in the natural earth.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So it's, you covered a little bit, it's not just the burial that you're able to keep green. You mentioned that you don't use embalming fluids. How long has this idea of green burial been around for?
Probably forever. I would say it's as old as dirt. It's the idea of if someone passes away, you prepare a space on your property and place the loved one into the ground. So this is something we all did 150 years ago. This is what people did on their way on the Oregon Trail out to the West Coast. This is what we really did before the Civil War. We just had people in the churchyard or in the backyard or even in a gathering place, but we just laid them lovingly into the ground and didn't worry so much about the formality of everything.
So what would you say are some of the benefits of choosing a green burial?
Well, there's 5 million of them, and I would say one would be saving the earth, saving money, saving the environment, saving the green in your wallet, doing the right thing, giving yourself back to the planet. I could go on, but it seems like a pretty good choice.
Okay, so I know you're part of it, what is Green Burial Portland and how are you involved?
The Green Burial Portland is merely a page and a group on Facebook. We had a consortium that came together, decided we were going to be people in Portland who were part of Green Burial back in the early days when people weren't a part of this, and the group disbanded and I stayed active, and I have a page called Green Burial Portland, and also there's a group, and I put all things green burial locally in the area, articles and ideas and updated cemeteries, and I'm just 20 miles outside of downtown Portland, and you'd be amazed. There's about 9 cemeteries just around us in the city here that allow natural burial. So I'm in the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot shaking, a lot popping, and I put different pictures of things I'm doing too, so people can see how easy this is and how they can provide their own transportation, and they can go ahead and bury people. And luckily for us in Oregon, we're one of those many states here in the US that allow private burial on private property. So I'm in a rural part of my county and I bury a lot of people in their backyards. So just letting people know how easy things are, just as long as it's legal and as long as it's ethical.
Okay, so then we're going to talk a little bit about the Green Burial Council. What is the Green Burial Council?
It's a nonprofit and it regulates green burial groups, and it really wants funeral homes and cemeteries and products that are not greenwashing, but are really having green true products and offering green services to be able to be vetted and accredited. And if someone wants to learn more about that, greenburialcouncil.org, you can read their blurb, what they're all about. Cornerstone Funeral that I run happens to be a member of it. and I'm on their speakers bureau, and I spoke at their conference last year, and it's a bunch of fantastic green folk, and they're really the cutting edge group of getting the information out and hopefully correctly for people who want to do the end of life in a green style.
Well, it sounds beautiful, and a good resource for those that are looking for that. Now, Green Burial, you say it's very hot, it's very popular in your area, or it's picking up there. There's a lot of places that are offering it. Clearly, if we're trying to leave the world a better place, is this just a national trend, or is this something that is growing internationally? Can we find this here in Canada where we are? Is this like going on over in Europe and other countries as well?
Going on all over the place. It's something we have done. Most people within the world take care of burials in a real natural way. One good resource, since you mentioned, look up the greenburialcouncil.org, look at providers, and you'll see throughout the US, throughout Canada, there are many places that allow natural burial. It's something that the Catholic Church is a big fan of. This is something the Jewish culture has been doing, the Muslim culture has been doing, definitely not a trend. It's something we were doing. We got away from it when the funeral industry started coming about and selling goods and services and making this a different sort of thing. We took it out of the family's hands and made it more of a corporate situation. And now people are saying, hey, I want to do this my own way. I've got land, or why do I want to buy some of these goods and services if it doesn't speak to who I am? So it's just really an option. There's an option. It's a great option. There's a cremation option. There's a natural organic reduction option. There's a burial at sea option. There's tons of options, because ultimately when it comes down to it, death is hard. It's horrible to lose somebody. And the more options we can provide to families to make the correct choice for them, how fabulous.
So do you find that something that normally an individual will sort of pre-plan for with their own green burial, or do you find that families after somebody's passing is able to find something to honor them in a way that they thought they might appreciate?
It's really everything. It's people saying, this is what I want when I die. And maybe they don't quite know how to get there. They don't quite know what that means, but they just want to have a green burial. Sometimes people will pass away and the family will come to me and say, okay, this was an earthy person, or this person was really into recycling and they really liked that idea, or they saw you in an article and they want to see what this is all about. So it is really all across the board, and it's different ages and it's different ethnic backups, it's different ethnic backgrounds, and it's different religious makeups. And I'm really fascinated sometimes the families that come forward and want this, different socioeconomic groups. It's just a matter if it speaks to you or not. And people are finding out it's really easy. It's not a matter of having your own property and having to do this on your yard. There is at least one cemetery in every single state, and a lot of the provinces in Canada now are having this happen. And you can have standard cemeteries which are putting an area aside or saying, this is something that we're okay. And really, natural burial is just not having a grave liner. If you don't have to have a grave liner or an outer burial container in a cemetery, then you can work backwards and say, well, why don't I have a biodegradable container, a shroud or cardboard box or a shroud or something? And maybe from there, I won't be embalmed too. And hey, there you go, the full enchilada. So it's kind of nice.
So clearly you're very knowledgeable about this. So you've written the Green Burial Guidebook. What sort of information is contained in this book? Like, are you able to sort of give us like a Sparks Note sort of?
Yes, so it's everything I'm talking about. It's that idea of how to do it, and how to, not just the anthropology or why, but letting you know, okay, you want to do this, this is how we go about it. It serves as a checklist. It serves as an idea to tell people, here's directions if you want to make your own wood casket. Here's directions if you want to make your own shroud. If you want to dig a grave in your yard, here's the directions on how to do that. Here's burial places, here's resources, here's stories of people who've done things. These are service ideas. These are wonderful ways to honor people. It just really gives an overview of, if you want to do this, here, get this book. It'll help you walk through it, and you'll learn so much more throughout the process.
Great. So that sounds like it's suitable for family members, like funeral directors, like the general public, and sort of there's something for everyone in that book. Where are we able to find that?
Well, the usual. Amazon has everything. I also suggest to people either call your local independent bookstore and give them the business. If they don't have it, have them order it, and that gives them the business. Also save a tree and get it off Kindle, get it someplace electronically. So you can do it that way. You can buy it used, and hey, even best, go into your library, you can get it for free.
All right. Now, if you could leave our audience with one sort of note or, something for them to go home and thinking about upon green burial or why they might choose that, what would that be?
I would say consider shades of green, because someone has once said to me, have you ever been to a 100% green burial? And I had to honestly answer, well, no, because there were a few people who decided to drive separately. So there wasn't carpooling, and there were people wearing leather shoes, and there was a couple people standing around with their Starbucks cup. So no, it's not really a full green burial, right? So there's going to be shades of green, and we try to get as green as possible. So even if you want something standard and you want to have a metal casket and embalming, and you want to have a traditional funeral, consider giving succulents rather than cut flowers. Consider recycled paper for your memorial folders. Consider having sustainable food out of your garden for your meal afterwards. There's ways to give back to the planet and not have to go full board green burial. You can do it in definitely other ways, and maybe just be conscientious of carpooling. That's a big one. Rather than every individual in their own car, it's really rare you see a car with all seats full nowadays. So good idea. Let's try it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming on, Elizabeth, and sharing with us a little bit about green burials, where people can find it and good sources of resource for them. Once again, everybody listening at home, thank you for listening to Funeral DNA, our podcast series that analyzes the unique components, trends, and innovations that make up the funeral industry. Stay tuned next week when we interview somebody else on a new topic. Thank you very much.